If it's power sports related, if it's a bank or credit union or finance company or manufacturer entity that has something power sports related, we're pretty aware of them, and hopefully they're pretty aware of us. We've got a great team of folks that focus on that part of our business, building those relationships and trying to find out how we can, expand this marketplace for them. And I like it because I think it gives a lot of our power sport dealers more opportunity to see what else they could sell.
Hey, welcome power sports enthusiasts and dealership managers to another episode of the Dealership Fix It podcast. I am your host. My name is Jacob Berry, and we are talking today with Mike Murray. He's the VP of Sales for NPA, also known as National Powersports Auction. And today we are going to talk about all things used motorcycles and the vehicle inventory market as a whole. So welcome, Mike. Nice to have you. How you doing today?
Thank you. Good to be here. Excited to be here. We're at the end of summer. Inventory values are changing. There's a lot of things to talk about to try to get some information out there to our dealers and help them be successful as we work into fall.
That's awesome, man. And happy October to you here. We're into a brand new month, brand new quarter. It's the last quarter of the year, and things are definitely rocking and rolling. So we appreciate you spending a little bit of time with us to kind of talk about the used bikes and where they've been, where they're going. So let's kick it off, man. To kind of start out, let's just kind of give your resume more or less. Can you kind of give our listeners just a little bit about your background, what you do in NPA, and just, give us a little bit of your authority here to be talking about used bikes to the dealerships?
Absolutely. So I am almost in my, let's see, I got to do the math here, 17th year. So 17 years and counting with National Powersport Auctions. I started out of the automotive wholesale side. I never really was strong in retail. I've always been in wholesale. But 17 years ago, plus when I started with National Powersport Auctions, there was 3 of us covering the entire country. And that is as dumb as it sounds, but we were a very different company 17 years ago, and we were just trying to understand, how do we interact more directly with dealers? How do we spread the word about purchasing and consigning and all the tools that are out there? And so we started with 3 of us, and we just, like I said, had the country chopped up into thirds. And okay, I guess I'll go to Colorado, and I guess you're going to go to Missouri sometime, and it was just all over the board. So fast forward, now we have the country divided up into 15 pieces. So we have 15 territory sales managers. We also have inside sales reps that assist them. We have a gentleman named Dusty Krepp, who gives me a good bit of assistance in overseeing the eastern side of the country. And then I oversee the western side of the country and the whole country as well. I'm kind of the master overseer, if you will. And Dusty gives me a bunch of help out there on the East Coast. Our team is working, trying to think of the best way to quantify it. They perform, I think we did over 8,000 dealer visits last year. We do on our last fiscal year. So we are into the same dealership many times. We're into some dealerships once if we find out there's just not a fit. And some dealers were there working with them and helping them and doing a lot of contact with them just to make sure we can help them. I've helped NPA launch a couple programs over the years. Most notably was the direct buy program. When I noticed that there was a need for dealers to have a way to handle trades they just didn't know anything about and had no confidence level in. And now we've got a team that runs that program, and that's been very successful for us to help dealers deal with some product that they can't get their head around. Gives us an opportunity to continue to help dealers get inventory flowing in and out of their doors.
That's interesting when you say you're talking to dealers and launching a program to help them with trades that they may not know much about. Is that like, say, a Harley dealer taking an import bike, or a motorcycle store taking in a watercraft? Yep. Stuff like that? Okay, cool.
Yeah, no, the very first bike we did was for a small Harley store in Northern California. And their trade-in policy was this: if we sold it and serviced it, we'll take it in on trade. Other than that, we're out. That was literally their trade-in policy.
Wow.
And super nice folks that ran it. And the territory sales manager at the time, he and I started talking about it. We go, man, there's a way we could help these guys. Nice people, easy to work with. They just had this tough policy. And I said, what do you do when you get a metric trade? Well, we just tell them no, thank you. And I said, check this out, pick up the phone, call me. I'm going to tell you what it's worth. I'm going to tell you what I'm going to pay in transportation. I'm going to show you the math, and then I'll even do it just to show you how the process works. And so we did this very manual, very first direct buy, and it was like a, I don't know, 2006 Vulcan or something like that. So a metric cruiser. And it worked, and they were stoked. And they said, well, cool, we'll call you on the next one. And we're like, no, we wanted to show you how easy it is. They're like, no, we just want to call you and have you take care of it. Otherwise, we want to deal with it. And so we found that it created a little bit of an easy button for dealers that just, in that situation, that particular Harley dealer had no interest in being engaged and understanding that metric market, but they did like the concept of being able to have a reliable, easy, hey, look, if someone does want to trade in a bike we're not interested in, here's one way we can get it to NPA.
Yeah. It just passes the liability from that desk manager that wants to take that deal, right? But he can't because it's a Yamaha or a Suzuki, knows nothing about.
The dealer has an outdated policy and their hands are tied, but we've helped them, help those guys figure a way out to, there's a lot of different ways we've named it, but in essence, if you guys don't think it's a retail piece, don't tell them to take it home and sell it on Marketplace or Craigslist. Figure out a way to take that bike off there. You don't need private party competition out there on the street. Let's get it in the dealership network.
Yeah. Just imagine how many deals that incrementally, lifted that dealer just by doing that, man. That's crazy.
That's another huge part of it too. We've seen that I don't know how to do that fuzzy math, but I feel confident, that for every, 100 or 1,000 bikes we buy on direct buy, that there's probably a couple hundred deals that wouldn't have happened if that feature didn't exist for the dealers.
If you're a motorcycle and power sports dealer, you already know the biggest marketplace websites are clunky, slow, and riddled with ads. Even if you pay big bucks to list your inventory, your competitors can pay even more to outrank you. That's why we created MotoHunt. Our site is famously streamlined and quick, with no extra nonsense to confuse buyers or dealers. That's why we rank so high in search results without having to spend millions in advertising. Why pay 3 times as much? At MotoHunt, one low price covers everything a dealer needs to get their inventory listed and collecting leads fast, with no multi-level pricing tiers and no way for your competition to out-premium you. No matter how many listings or leads you generate, your subscription price is the same. Click the link to find out how MotoHunt can help you start generating more leads today.
That's cool. That's a great program. So we got a couple questions that we want to ask you. This again is intended to be all, revolving around the used bike market and, how you help service that need to the dealers. So let's start with the trends, right? So it's been a couple years, ups and downs. We've had some weird, market impacts. This, it's kind of hitting the used bike market oddly, right? We had vehicle values spike when some of the OEMs were shutting down some inventory, allocation, logistics was a nightmare, right? So used bikes just kind of went bananas, right? Can you help me from the inside? You guys have a great data set that you can rely on and look at these trends. Can you kind of just help us understand in the last couple of years, the peaks and valleys of what you've seen in these used bike values as it comes to the wholesale buy for the dealers?
Yeah. Man. So yes, I'll try to do my best to give you the verbal here. So I was in Cincinnati. We had just done a dealer education seminar, I think with some Harley dealers in February of 2020. And it might have been February or March. I should know that. Anyway, February or March 2020, right before things really kind of shut down. But there was already some little inklings that supply was tough. And I remember watching Harley dealers buying current model and 1 model year old street glides for MSRP basically at the auction. And everyone's like, whoa, that is crazy. That's, and so us internally, we're like, who is that dealer? So we go and we look in our system. I'm like, that's a Harley dealer. And I know who that is. He's a pretty smart guy. He's not just going crazy here. He knows what he's doing. And that was really the early onset of the pricing inflation, if you will, right? Where pre-owned prices just kept climbing and it seemed like there was no end. And it was the same thing on the wholesale side. Dealers could put way too much money in a trade. And if they turned around and retailed it, they did fine. And if they sent it to the auction, they did fine. We saw that build quite nicely, into calendar year 22. And then kind of on that back half about a year ago, That's when all of a sudden, the world opened back up, people started going back to work, and those values came down pretty hard. The question was, how far down were they going to go? We've been playing with a bunch of charts to kind of perfect this and understand where it's really at. And from what we can see on the charts is that we probably, from the peak that we went up to and then came back down, we probably still haven't met what should have been the depreciation curve, right? If the prices started here in a normal year, they were going to be down here in a normal, call it 5-year time span. We still haven't met what a theoretical depreciation, curve would be for that same inventory. So we still feel like there is some certain models that will continue to depreciate. And by certain models, I mean, it's in specific right now. It's really going to depend on the supply on the new and of course demand as well. But we're seeing a lot of values kind of get down to where they need to be. Inventory supply is getting much better, other than some specific models from some of the Japanese manufacturers. And I think maybe some things out of Harley as well. But by and large, you can get pretty much most of the product you'd want to buy right now, which also has caused pre-owned prices to level because there's just not that demand that there was for anything. So we've seen the pre-owned prices continue to stabilize, but not 100%. Sport bikes, for instance, have stayed elevated. Sport bikes are still hot. Well, you can't buy a brand new R6 anymore. And the prices of CBR 600s and ZX6s have continued to climb astronomically. So pre-owned sport bikes that are clean have held their value pretty well. Same can be said a little bit with metric cruisers. Those have held their values, not quite as good as sport bikes, but they've kind of found a little level because they're price point appropriate. Some of that more expensive stuff, stuff in that mid-teen, some of the adventure touring bikes and some of the Harleys, that stuff still has some equalization to happen. It's still probably not settled to where it will, 6 months from now.
That's interesting. And what about the other side of that spectrum? If sport bikes are at the top holding their really high values, what type of segments or models or brands have hit the other side of that where they've just kind of been, at bottomed?
So Harleys are an interesting segment, right? Because so through the auction, we sell more Harley-Davidson than anything else. Not a surprise. They retail and they sell more than anything else as a brand, right? So they make up a huge part of our auction. So they're really easy test case because we have so many model years and mileage variants and everything to run through our data set. And they start to get kind of stratified. And we're seeing that happen again to where higher mileage Harleys have really just, the bottoms dropped out of them, right? 2 years ago, year and a half ago, a 40 or 50,000 mile street glide could sell for 15 grand and book might be 16 grand. Today, that same bike where book, theoretically, if we were a year and a half later, it was a year and a half newer model where it might have a $15,000 or $16,000 book. If it has 50,000 miles on it, it may only be worth 10 grand. So we've seen some valuations drop 20, 25, 30% just in the last 18 months on some of that type of product. However, really clean under 20,000 mile stuff may have only dropped 5, maybe 10%, because there's still a desirability. There's still a value case for that on the retail side. The stuff that's easier to sell retail obviously has been less impacted by the additional inventory and the slightly lower demand on the retail front.
Okay. And that's what you attribute some of that to, is the lower in demand, or it's getting a little harder to get loans? I mean, what is the major factors that you guys see on your side?
Yeah, I think you're exactly right. I think that's what I'm hearing from dealers more so, is that the financing is a challenge. I'll also throw in there that dealers have young staff compared to the times. I like to, when we do our education events, I like to ask dealers, hey, what's the average age of your sales staff? And if it's under 4 years as an average, then you have a lot of people that don't remember what it was like in the teens, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, to have to work a deal, talk to a customer, build a relationship. If all they've worked here is, 2019, 20, 21, 22, all they know how to do is take an order. Sorry, but that's probably where they're at. And so going back to, the basic blocking and tackling of structuring a deal, working with a customer, building a relationship, trying to have a happy guy at the other side of that deal, that's new for a lot of guys. So there's that. Then there's the financing. But if you haven't done the basic blocking and tackling, you're going to have a hard time getting past the financing. If you don't have the right product, you're going to have a hard time getting past all this as well. So there's a lot of variables in there. There's not easy to say that's the problem. Yeah, if interest rates were 0.9% again, would that be easier? Yeah, sure. If there was, less expensive new product, would that help new sales? Sure. If there was less expensive used product, that might help sales, but it's kind of a hodgepodge of things going against it right now, I think. And dealers having slightly more new inventory on hand than they probably wish they did because of the related flooring costs.
Yep.
And the fact that pre-owned values have shifted relatively quickly also makes it hard for dealers to find that happy spot. Because if I'm a dealer and I have, back in March or April, I took in some bikes that I took in right, and I haven't sold them by now, I'm easily 10-15% wrong. I probably couldn't I probably have no chance of retailing them for what I paid wholesale for them. And on the wholesale side, I'm probably underwater by, I don't know, $1,000 or $1,500 the way the market has adjusted since spring this year.
It's a great point. And let's kind of dive into that, right? So a lot of dealers are grappling with some major inventory challenges left over from some of those heydays of, I'm going to pay all the money for this bike because I know it'll sell. Oh, wait a minute. We've had a shift in consumer change and demand. Now I'm sitting on all this inventory. What do I do? What would be some best case scenario, some best advice that you would give some of these dealers using your tools, using the auction, using some different retail strategies? How can we help these guys unload some of this unwanted inventory now?
Man, this is one of our favorite topics. So we do a weekly call with all of my sales team, and we talk about the aged inventory problem. The answer is you got to move it. I'm going to put it this way. We've thrown this away. If to be a good sales manager, all you had to do was buy bikes and sit on them until they sold, anybody could be a good sales manager. That's just not the case though, right? So although that's a little edgy, it's a fact. Managing pre-owned inventory is just that. It is an active thing. You have to manage it. I often look back to what I learned from some good friends of mine that were in the car industry, and they have very, very strict turn times. The most successful automotive dealers have very strict turn times on their pre-owned. Well, why is that? Why would they be so in a hurry to send a perfect 3-year-old Honda Accord to the auction just because it's been on the lot for 61 days? Even if it was in service for 30 of those days, it's only been available for 31 days and it hits 61 days. And the sales manager is saying, going, hey, we got to get rid of this thing now. Yeah. Well, every piece of inventory that we own as a dealer is an investment. And if that investment doesn't pay off in a timely manner, it's time to get out of it. If you have an investment at your local bank and you put it in some kind of money market or something and it drops, the bottom drops out of it, you can pull your money out of it and reinvest it in something else and go, well, that didn't work out. Or you can sit there and wait. Well, eventually it's going to turn around. Eventually it's going to turn around. Or they're going to give me something for free if I leave it there. There's some other benefit, right? We convince ourselves that doing nothing is maybe a better course of action rather than ripping a Band-Aid off. The strong belief that I can retail out of it and I'm better off to make $1,000 on the back end and lose $1,000 to a customer than go exchange my inventory at the auction the same day. Hey, I'll take my $1,000 loss, but I'll buy a bike that's going to sell within 3 weeks. That's the thing that is very difficult. It's very painful for a lot of folks to get their head around. Hey, I'm willingly going to take some losses so that I can freshen my inventory and have product that's going to show margin. There's so many different thoughts I have about this. Just to kind of take another pass at it, we'd like to believe that dealers can turn their inventory at least 3, probably 4 times a year. And if you're in if you're in a geographic location that has very seasonal weather, well, you may not be able to do it perfectly, every quarter, turn each piece of inventory, but in your spring season, you might turn your inventory 2 or 3 times in a 3-month time period because that's just when it's hot.
Yeah.
Every time an inventory doesn't turn, that is a percentage return you're losing on that. We just had our CEO do a little piece on this. And, if you're making 20% margin on a good piece of used inventory, and if you turn that 4 times, that's 80% on your original $10,000 investment, right? You can make $8,000 off that $10,000 investment. Every time you don't turn it, you're taking $2,000 out of your pocket that you're not making at the end of the year. That's the real math.
It's a good way to put that.
Yeah. But I'm going to hold on to these 3 because eventually I'm going to probably not make my 20% margin. I'm actually probably going to break out of them, but I'm going to gain a customer and make $1,000 on the back end versus being done with it and making your 20% margin plus your $1,000 you'd make on F&I. It's fuzzy math there. I think that's one of the challenges we have is coming to terms with understanding that cash cycle and how critical it is to the dealership versus just dragging it along and hoping that it's going to sell eventually.
I love the way that you put that, but don't you also think that in a, data depleted industry like we have, right? There's only a couple of providers that can say, hey, this is a worthwhile product to have, to keep in stock, and this is not. Don't you think a lot of these dealers that choose to hold on to these unicorns, these bikes that they think will do really well, is doing their stat? They're thinking, they're using their gut. They're saying, I know I've sold that before. I think I can sell it again. I'm going to hold on to it longer. Mm-hmm. When really the market around them has shifted pretty substantially, and they're now sitting on an anchor, right? That's losing them money.
You're exactly right. If I'm the guy sitting on inventory and the guy across town is the guy that rotates his inventory, within 60 to 90 days, if I still have my same inventory, I'm still holding every last retail dollar I can, because I am buried in it. And my guy across town that's rinsed his inventory and said, man, I got some dogs here, I got to get rid of them. Whether I blow them out on a weekend sale or I send them to NPA or whatever you do with them, he's refreshed that inventory. The inventory he now has advertised, he is in at current true ACV. He has now got the actual cash value in at wholesale. So his retail prices are definitely going to be thousands, 10%, 20% lower than the guy that's still trying to squeeze the dollars that he put into it 9 months ago. And yeah, you are working against yourself if you don't realize that somebody in town is figuring out that, hey, I got to turn some inventory and have some correctly priced stuff here. Making 20%, 15, 20% and turning that inventory is a whole lot better than holding on to make 20% eventually in 9 or 10 months. If you do it 2 or 3 times, it's going to pay out a lot more in the long run. And it's tough. One thing I love about our industry is we are passionate, right? We're emotional. Man, that is a perfect CBR 600. There's no way I'm going to wholesale that thing. That thing will bring the money. I know it'll sell, no, it'll sell, no, it'll sell. CBR 600 is a pretty easy one. Okay, pick something maybe a little more obscure. Yeah, it might, and you might have sold 2 of them. But if you're not the Goldwing guy or the VT 750 guy that can always sell those, you just happen to have one that you think is really nice, and that was your first bike, and someone's going to love it. That's not the strategy that's going to financially benefit you in the long run.
You can't get married to these bikes, right? You have to.
Oh, they're trying though. They're trying though, man. I go in there and I'm starting to see stuff that's still got balloons on the handlebars. I'm like, oh, did you guys have a sale this weekend? They're like, no, that's Mike's birthday. So
wow.
there's birthday bikes are happening again, and that is rough. And I feel bad for those guys because there's a way to manage through that. And for that thing to have a birthday, that means 6 months ago you knew it was old, and you still had it 6 months later. And that's the part that I feel real bad about, because it's like, man, I wish I could show you that you got to jump in and realize when you got a problem. And if you got a 6 month piece of inventory, there's not any good reason, rationale, sense that says it's going to sell in the next 6 days or even 60 days. So that's kind of one of those drop dead things in my book. Is it 6 months? You're chasing a dream.
That's a good point. Yeah. Using your inventory counter, looking at your inventory reports. There's a lot of resources out there. There are some tools. Dealers can no longer use their gut and their love or that passion to say, I think that's a cool bike, it'll sell. Yeah. No. You got to use the data that's in front of you. Okay.
I'll say one thing. Because we run into that too. I mean, I see it. We're all bike fans, right? So that works like through spring. But as soon as you get to like July or August, if any of those bikes that you were sure were going to sell, like again, there's a seasonality curve. We talked about a little while ago. That seasonality, that hot part of the season pretty much wraps up in July. And if you're still sitting on one of those had to have, that's the sweetest bike I've ever seen type thing in August or September, it didn't work. And you got to cut bait.
It's a bad bet. Well, let me drill down into that strict automotive turn ratio one more time. What did they typically do for their turn? Like a 30, 60, 90 day, and then they unloaded at the 91st?
Automotive, well, and you'll see variations. A group that I had some knowledge of, right, had some friends there. They were a 60-day hard turn time. And at the 61st day, the sales manager was losing money. It's aggressive. And in 60 days is too aggressive for our industry, right? Because we don't have to have motorcycles. People had to have cars, right? And this particular dealer that I was friends with, he had a Toyota store. So they had tons of sellable cars. If you needed a car, if you had a $10,000 or $15,000 budget, whatever, on their pre-owned, they had cars for you. For us, I think that point of inflection is 90 to 100 days with some accommodation for seasonality, right? The weather is important. I've heard it said, I certainly didn't coin the phrase, but a lot of people say, hey, we are a bit of a solar powered industry. When the sun's not out, things are pretty slow. When the sun's out, they are. If we have a super deep winter, on-road bikes might need to have a little more grace period than 90 or 100 days. If you're in a city or an area that doesn't thaw out on time come the springtime. But from the summer selling season or the spring through the summer, even the fall selling season, I think that 90-day mark is a very appropriate, maximum. Hey, if you took something in March or April at the latest and you still have it 91 days later, time to go.
Yeah. And that's 90 days total in inventory, regardless of how well the reconditioning process is going or parts availability for all that stuff as well. Or are you not factoring that 90 days?
That's where you gotta, some of these things need to be, fine tuned to your dealership, and there'll be a big argument, especially right now with parts availability, because it's not perfect yet. It's better, but not perfect. In the automotive side, they don't care. In the automotive side, they say it's an investment. Either the investment pays off. I don't care why it does or why it doesn't, right? They take all of the emotion out of it, which is kind of respectable. Okay, so that mirror cover is back ordered. Well, then we shouldn't have bought it at the first place. If it can't fix itself in 60 days, it's out of here. Let's go worry about something else. Okay, it's unemotional, it's factual, it's calculated, it happens. And guess what? The next time that sales manager is taking a car like that on trade or buying one at the auction, and he sees it's got a mirror cover problem, he's going to check before he actually buys that bike, or he's going to know his product before he brings it in. Okay, so I will give points to the fact that I don't care why it took 90 or 100 days. If it took that long and it didn't sell, it's got to go regardless, because you probably shouldn't take it in the first place. If it was a repair issue, you might not have done your work. Step onto our more passionate, more loving, more accepting side of the power sports world. Hey, look, yeah, it's a great bike. We missed some of our peak selling season. Let's get that new stator cover or whatever that we couldn't get that finally showed up. Let's give it 30 days on the floor once it's ready to rock and roll, regardless of how long it's been in the system. If it doesn't ring the phone in 30 days, maybe we cut it loose then. Like I say, it's not going to be perfect. And I expect that most dealers aren't going to jump onto dude, he's right. 100-day turn time. Let's go. I don't care. That's going to be pretty hard to get people behind. But I think there's some magic to realizing, all right, realistically, we didn't know it needed a stator cover. We didn't know it needed part X, Y, or Z when we bought it. We got it fixed. It's finally here. Let's try to retail this thing. But if it doesn't retail in a reasonable amount of time now, you still got to have that same mindset that if it doesn't return its investment back to you, then got to get a different investment going.
That's a great point. That's a great point. And even if a dealer's listening to this now and they go, you know what, maybe I do want to look into how we can implement a 100-day or 120-day turn time, that might expose some timelines that they didn't realize they had a bottleneck in for that recon process, right? If they're looking at the aged inventory of their DMS report and they're going, man, this thing has already hit 90 days, but it's not up front yet. What is my service department doing? What are the inventory and the parts looking like? And what's on special order for this thing? And you might see a bottleneck in that frontline ready process, right? So it may be an exposing type process more than it is I got to cut it loose at the 120-day mark. Don't you think? I
agree with that. And I'll tell you why. I recently was at one of our auctions and had some nice, 2, 3, 4-year-old Harleys come through. I'm gonna call it out. I won't mention the dealership, but I had some nice Harleys. I'm like, these things are really nice. Well, this one's missing a seat, and this one's missing a throttle tube, and this one's missing, a CDI box or whatever it was, the ignition module. And I'm like, that's kind of weird. These things are really clean. And I turned the key on. I'm like, these things only have a couple thousand miles on them. They're great. Well, those things had been trade-ins that while they were going through recon, they needed a part for a different bike and they couldn't get parts. And so this $10,000, $15,000 bike got parts borrowed off it. And that was like 7 months ago. And finally they we got to get rid of that stuff. And so here's the other problem. When the bikes sit around in the back room too much and your service department's like, oh man, we're still back order on that part. It only needs this one part. Well, that other bike just came in and it has one. Yeah, let's put that part on there. Let's get this thing going. And that's what these guys kind of became a victim of, is they had like half a dozen bikes that were great bikes, but they'd borrowed some parts off it. And then it kind of gets pushed back in the corner and forgotten about. And all of a sudden it's 120, 160 days in inventory. That's a problem.
It became a donor bike at that point.
It became a donor bike, and it became worth very little compared to what it should have been worth, or should have been just, put out on the retail floor or addressed. So yeah, that inventory that sits around in dealerships, we got bananas, not gold, right? It goes one direction in value. They don't age well.
That's a good way to put it. I like that.
Yeah.
And the solar powered industry. I like that too. That you got some
Yeah.
good sayings there. Okay. So let's keep talking about the take-in process, right? The intake of these used bikes at the dealership level. So in your extensive experience, you're talking to a lot of these dealers, have been for many years. What are some other practical best practices, best tips that these successful dealers are doing when they're actually taking in these bikes, whether they may hit that that turn to auction or unloading, but they're just taking in bikes in general, right? Used bikes only. What are some best practices to look out for on that stuff? Hey guys, this episode is brought to you by Moto Hunt Premium. Moto Hunt Premium empowers power sports dealers with data and technology to give the best possible market advantage on every vehicle at your dealership. Moto Hunt Premium offers a suite of features such as real-time market analysis, inventory management, and up-to-date pricing guides like JD Power and NPA. Dealers love to leverage the platform to identify potential inventory risks and potential issues with your online listings. And it also helps to execute make and model strategies, enabling dealers to help move inventory faster and make more profit. To start leveraging our technology at your dealership, go to motohuntpremium.com. That's motohuntpremium.com to learn more and request a free inventory audit for your dealership today.
So best practices, and this is great because I'm doing a little seminar in Cincinnati next week about most of this stuff. This specifically, best practices that I like to tell people is you have to look at every deal. I've been in dealerships in the last 3 months where talking with some sales guys while we're waiting to talk to a GM or a sales manager or someone, and ask them how trade-ins are going. It's like, yeah, well, we're still taking stuff in, but we're not taking everything in. I mean, we're really looking for specific things. Well, what that is means he's telling a customer that he's telling them, no, we're not taking trades right now. Yeah, we're not really buying anything right now, right? Worst thing that you can ever tell a customer is that we're not taking in trades. Make sure that vocabulary does not exist in your dealership. Hey, will you take in my 1982 Goldwing? No, we're not really interested. That's the wrong answer. Yeah, we'll take a look at it. Bring it in. It's $100 bike. It's a $50 bike. It's worth nothing. But if you tell that customer, yes, we'll look at that, he is now going to show up versus maybe go somewhere else that even if they said, yeah, we'll take a look at it, you haven't told them it's worth $500 or $5, right? So number one best practice is give yourself a shot with every customer by saying, yes, we will look at any trade. And again, I've heard it at the salesperson level, so I know it's in other stores where sales managers or general managers or whatever management has said, hey, look, we're softening up on trades. Let's just not get quite so aggressive as we have been. That can get pervasive down into that bottom level and start putting the message out there to your potential customers that, yeah, they don't really take in trades right now, or they wouldn't even look at my bike. Yeah. That's a toughie. So number one, make sure you're giving yourself an opportunity on every single potential trade-in or even off the street buy. It's not just trade-in. Hey, I want to sell my bike. Well, what is it? Oh, it's a Honda Goldwing trike. Oh man, we don't really deal with those. No, thanks. Wrong answer. Yep, we'd like to take a look at it. You know what? We can take a look, see if we can do something with that. Whatever. But give yourself the opportunity, even if it's not something that's your mainstay. When you are looking at a trade-in, again, I've got a little bit that I do with the deal on our education is, every bike looks great from 100 feet away. No matter how bad it looks great. Oh, is that your bike out there? Yeah. How many colors did you rattle can that? That's awesome. Not what the hell am I going to do with that? I mean, again, it's not totally facetious. But yeah, let's go take a look at it. Right. 50, 150, 2 foot, kind of deal, right? When you get 2 feet to go, this is going to be a tough one for us with the paint work. That's not exactly factory and some other things, but I'm sure we can still put a number together on this. Let's go back inside. I'm going to have my mechanics come out and look at it, and let me get the keys. I'll listen to it and see if there's anything else we got to know, but let's go figure out your deal on your new bike or your newer bike, whatever it's going to be. I think that's huge as well. Going out there, looking at the bike, writing down the VIN number, capturing all the customer's information, whether the salesperson or sales manager does some sort of a written evaluation is also very important. Takes maybe 5 or 10 minutes. Number one thing I don't like is post-it note trade-in evaluations. They still happen out there. What's he got? Oh, he's got a 2007 V-Star 1100. Okay. Yeah. See if he'll see, we'll do $4,500. See what he says. Right. Okay. You haven't built any value with the customer. You just throw them a number out there. You go out there, you spend 5-10 minutes, you write, watch around it, touch the tank, touch the seat. When was the last oil change? When was the last tires? What can you tell me about it? Ask him a few questions, and then you come up and say, hey, listen, so we've done all our homework and looking at this thing. It looks like for us, this is a $4,500 bike on trade-in, right? You've now created a value. He's seen you put effort and energy into that trade-in value. It's not just a number out of thin air. And even if he thinks it's worth more, he now knows that you've done some homework versus, it's $4,500 bike. What do you want to do? So again, I think this gets back to some of that earlier conversation about that customer interaction, where for during the COVID bump, post-it evaluations worked all day long. It either worked or it didn't. If that guy doesn't buy that bike, the next guy's going to buy it. So who cares? Doesn't work like that anymore. You need to invest in the time with that customer, invest in the time to understanding that potential trade-in. A, so your customer is with you and you understands where your value came from. B, you as the dealer going into it correctly. Hey, look, $4,500. They're trading at NPA for about $5,200. If we're going to recon it, it needs $700, $800. Okay, we have options. We can take it in at $4,500, send it to NPA. We can take it in, we can recon it. We have a plan here. We know what's going to happen. And by the way, we're still good on our retail deal as well, right? Knowing all those numbers are far more beneficial when you actually do a legitimate trade-in evaluation versus, they're worth about $4,500. See if they'll take it.
Man, all these things that you're talking about are more or less just a philosophical shift in the culture, right? So yeah, we went from order taking to just throw something out there. I'm sure he'll buy it. The next guy behind him will if he doesn't. To we actually have to, we got to work for these deals now, right? We got to build that value, go through the rapport, do the trade-in process. Man, what you're spinning here is gold. And I fully agree with you 100%. We've got some hard times ahead of us here, and it's not going to get any easier doing old practices like that. So for sure.
Yeah.
So some good tips there, some good tips. That's when a dealer, takes it in their recon process, whether that's good or bad or somewhere in between. They get it frontline ready. They've sat on it. They've tried to retail it. Let's say they've gone through some type of, let's go through our reporting. Let's see what's on auction. Maybe we don't really have a place for this bike here. Let's go send it to NPA or another auction that's local to them, right? Tell me a little bit about the crucial role that y'all play when it comes to connecting the sellers, dealerships trying to unload these inventory with the buyers, and maybe share some insights into how your platforms and services help provide that outlet for these, we'll call them unwanted units after a certain time.
Gotcha. There's the markets vary any geographic area to any geographic area, right? And sometimes those geographic areas can be 100 or 150 miles apart. Sometimes they're thousands of miles apart. NPA really hit its rhythm when we brought out online bidding. And that was just a little bit before I started with NPA, kind of in the mid early-ish 2000s, when online bidding became a thing and you could kind of have reliable internet speed and some other things that worked pretty well. By today's standards, it was a nightmare, but that was brand new and we thought it was great. The fact that it took less than 2 seconds to click a bid button and see it show up on your screen. Right now it's milliseconds. So the reason that the NPA marketplace works is because of that. It's because when XYZ Harley here in San Diego says, man, I got some trade-ins or I got some aged inventory I got to send to the auction, and PDQ Harley-Davidson from Arizona or Texas or Utah is at the auction, goes, oh man, I do really well with those right now. I could use more of those. And those are worth more to me than some other bikes, right? There's always going to be different inventory mixes and valuations depending on the dealer. And some dealerships do really well with Dynas, and some do really well with street glides or road glides, or some dealerships are sport bike dealerships, some are cruiser dealerships, off-road, etc. They build value in their brand as a dealership, and they build a customer base who's looking for specific things. So by putting, wholesale inventory in the NPA marketplace, you literally will reach out to thousands of dealerships at every individual auction. That's kind of the magic, right? It's this whole big thing. Well, my wholesaler will show up and write me a check for $5,000 for that bike right now. Well, okay, it's probably a $5,000 bike, but it'll never be worth any more of that, because once you take his $5,000, it's done. Now, if I say it's a $5,000 bike and you bring it to the auction and we have a couple extra bidders on the floor, it could be a $5,500 or $5,800 bike. Because of that competition, because there could be somebody who needs that. There could be a customer order trying to get filled. Hey, I got someone looking for a entry-level touring bike or a mid-level sport bike or whatever it happens to be. The auction is the marketplace. You can shop for that. When you're taking trade-ins off the street, you get what comes in through the door, right? You might have 1 or 2 or 3 people a day or a week or whatever your industry, your little business area might be like. Hey, another red CBR 600. Well, if I can sell those, I love that. But what if it's another, purple, Ninja 250? How many of those do you need? Well, that's all that's coming in off the street. Well, you go to the auction and you can see, up to 1,000, 1,200 different motorcycles several times a week, depending on what part of the country you're in. You now can shop from that marketplace as well. Hey, I'd like to buy that off the street, where I might even buy it less than the auction. Well, you should. You have all the cards in your hand when you're buying it at your dealership from a guy that wants to sell you. But at the auction, we provide the convenience. I can tell you what you're buying. I've looked at it. If there's a problem, I'm going to make it right. And you can buy 5, 10, 25 bikes in one scoop, put them on a truck, have them at your dealership next week, and you're set. You've got your inventory refill there. So from a selling side, you're putting it out to that market and you're increasing your potential by getting it in front of more eyeballs rather than a couple. And from a buyer standpoint, you're making it easy. You're able to come in and say, look, I need to buy some stuff. I have some certain holes to fill on my floor. I don't have anything between $5,000 and $10,000 on my floor for sport bikes or metric cruisers or adventure bikes or whatever it happens to be. Well, you can sit around and wait for it to roll in on a trade, or you can go to the auction, buy 3 or 4 of them and have that need met. There's no other really way to do that. You can start calling Facebook Marketplace and Craigslist and doing that way, which is great. But again, you're kind of at the mercy of the person on the other end of the line. You go to the auction, you can have it all sorted out within a matter of hours and know what you've got and you don't have.
That's great. Yeah. And you guys cater to all sorts of sizes of these dealerships, right? So you've got these mega groups that have, 20, 30 dealerships. And then you have the little mom and pop shop in somewhere, Utah, that, only sells 1 or 2 brands. How do you guys cater to the specific needs of the different size dealers?
That's an interesting question because it never really comes up, because I'm trying to think of it to not sound canned, but whether a dealer's here to buy 20 or 30 bikes or 1 or 2 bikes, it's really the same experience for us. They're looking at the same condition reports. They're working with the same auctioneer. Every bike is sold individually. There's no package deal. There's nothing like that. So, the opportunity for the guy that needs 1 or 2 bikes a month is that he can search from a massive amount of bikes and he can kind of pick and choose. And the advantage for the guy that needs 25 or 35 bikes is that he has, again, that same massive selection. And, if he doesn't get these or doesn't get those ones in this lane, he can go to the other lane or he can bid earlier or later in the game. So, for us, there's a little benefit of economy to scale for transportation. If you're buying 25 or 30 bikes and you want to, fill up a truck, then it's a little bit easier. But a lot of times the guys that are buying 1 or 2 bikes, they'll bring their own truck and trailer. Sometimes it's 5 or 10. They can get on a trailer, drive down from Utah, Idaho, Arizona, Northern California, wherever they're coming in from. They can buy their bikes in the morning, fill their truck in the afternoon, and they're well up to almost home by evening.
Okay. And what about the dealers that maybe don't have the resources to come and take their own inventory with their own truck and trailer? How do they logistically get that back to their dealer and, get that transport done?
So that's one of the things NPA has done a fantastic job over the last several years, is perfecting our transportation. We actually own some of our own trucks now, our own drivers. And so we set some of our own routes. We also work with excellent other transportation companies and logistics companies that specialize in motorcycles. So, we have moved motorcycles to and from Alaska. That's about the most challenging one. Hawaii. I've got a great client in Hawaii who buys and sells with me regularly. So those are 2 of your most challenging. So if you happen to be in Bozeman, Montana, or, Peoria, Illinois, or wherever, that's no big deal. We've dealt with more challenging ones than that for sure. We have a full transportation department that will handle that. They'll do quote by quote basis. We actually have a whole interfacility transfer route that's actually on our website where you can say, hey, if I buy something in San Diego and I just want to pick it up in Dallas, that's literally, not quite a button push, but literally a quick message to us says, hey, I just bought these 2 bikes in San Diego. Please IFT them to Dallas. Done. We'll tell you when they hit Dallas, you can come pick them up. So we've really tried to advance that transportation part because it's a challenge and it's frustrating and it's a difficult part of any industry. The transportation part is, especially ours, where the merchandise can be different sizes. A trike, a slingshot, a spider, all the weird size shape stuff that we have to transport gets real challenging. And it's a little bit of that Jenga game of, okay, what can we get in what truck going where? But our team does a really, really good job of it.
we've been talking mostly up until this point about mostly motorcycles, on-road stuff. How do you deal with the off-road? Side by sides is a huge market. What about personal watercraft,
Yep.
boats? How do you
Yep.
deal with all those?
Very well.
Maybe elaborate a little bit more on that one.
No, the same. We actually have the side by side, and all those rates are also on our sheets because they're a huge part of our industry. And it's not inexpensive to move a 4-seat side by side across the country. It's cost as much as an automobile, right? So you could cost many hundreds, if not $1,000, depending on how far you're trying to move it. But something we're very transparent about. We tend to get enough inventory at all the auctions to where those types of things don't get moved around too much. So that's nice from a cost savings to the buyers. But I do have folks in parts of the country that buy from one auction away, if you will, right? So some Cincinnati guys that might buy out of Dallas or vice versa in Atlanta and San Diego, and they might see some deals on some particular units. Out here in San Diego, when we get some of the more call it the more commercial angled side by sides, right? If we get some Kawasaki Mules or some Polaris Generals, those aren't all that popular out here. So some Dallas guys are still able to buy them and go, oh yeah, I can pay up for that, even if it costs me $500 to get it to Dallas, because that's still a smoking deal. Because you just can't get those in Texas because people drive those things into the ground, and vice versa. Sometimes the sports stuff, it's doing better in most locations now, but some of the sports stuff definitely does better in certain auctions. And so the reverse is true. There could be some guys out of California buying out of Dallas or even Cincinnati sometimes to look for the value proposition and just back out their transportation. Hey, that's going to cost me $600 to get it here. Okay, just deduct that off my price, what I want to pay for it. And if I can get it, no big deal.
That's great. That's great. You talked a little bit about some of your most challenging logistics was getting something to Hawaii or Alaska, but what are some more common success stories that you have with buying, selling, the dealerships to the wholesalers? Just give us a couple good yay for NPA kind of stories that you've been really able to help these dealers out with their inventory.
So that there's a lot of, I can think of a lot of them come flooding into my mind as we were talking about this earlier, and still didn't quite crystallize the best stories. But had one dealer in Arizona who was a Harley dealer. I used to call on this dealership for years when I was a territory sales manager before I had the role I had now. And we had really good rapport, and he kind of was a little bit into pre-owned, but not really all the way into it. And I'm not going to quote myself on this, but probably about 6 or 7 years ago, he just kind of said, hey, you know what? I'm going to try to do more pre-owned. I'm really going to focus on it. I'm really going to be more aggressive about taking in every trade I can and some things like that. And I'm going to see how this works. And I said, yeah, that's cool, man. Let me know what works. Let me know what else you need. He's like, no, I got it. You got me dialed in here. I think I can do this. Well, at the end of that first calendar year, he ran a separate set of numbers to go, okay, what did I do in pre-owned? He's like, dude, I made an extra $80,000 by having a pre-owned program, net, not gross, net.
In 1 year.
In 1 year, I took an extra 80 grand by giving this some attention and watching it and making sure I had the right product at the right time. He didn't go nuts. He didn't sell 10,000 pre-owned units. He didn't go crazy. He just said, hey, like I'm a medium-sized Harley store. I do pretty well on new. I don't do a lot of used. I have a handful here and a handful there. I want to try to stock 20 to 30 pre-owned and sell them competitively and work through them. And boom, and he goes, I don't think it really cost me that much more money. I don't think I opened myself for any liability. I don't think I had any significant different expenses other than just going, hey, look, when people aren't ringing the phone on new bikes, they do still ring the phone on used bikes a lot of times.
Yeah. And so this was 6 or 7 years ago that you started the program with him. And in that first year, he did 80 grand. Have you followed up with him since to see how he's doing?
Well, I haven't asked for the numbers, but I actually am on his email list and I still get his emails. I got one, I think, just in the last 2 days. They send an email out with all their monthly specials and it's all pre-owned. So fairly confident it's still working well for him, but I haven't asked. Yeah, haven't asked, but good guy and happy to find that success in his niche in that area as well.
Nice.
We've worked with some multi-store groups and had some multi-store groups that really wrestled with managing the pre-owned and a lot of the wholesale liquidation. When you get 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 stores or more, as there's a lot of groups with more than that right now, some of those larger groups, it's real easy for that inventory to get lost in the corners of the service room and the storage room and the back lot. And this one group that I worked with, they were doing different things at every single store. and they were tracking wholesale profit and loss, and they were very, very, very numbers centric, which was cool. But we were helping stores and we were building relationship, and same deal. After a while, they said, look, we just want to send everything to you. We're figuring out that we got a wholesaler over there at this store who all of a sudden, somebody is got a, driving a nice truck, and we can't figure out why, and he's in charge of the wholesale. And also there's some things that just didn't quite add up, and so I just said, yeah, we'd love to help you out. Tell me what we can do for you. Right. And so they had some questions and how to manage us from a high level, and how to get all the stores set up, and what the process looks like. And if we can do transportation, and then, if we can, make sure we give them reports of when their product is on site and what still needs titles and what the issues are, and all things we do normally. But once we all came together on that, and again, this has been, 5 years now that we've had this good working agreement going, and essentially they have no more wholesale pain, so to speak, of anything weird going on. Now, all of their sales managers and general managers are focused on new unit sales, or pre-owned unit sales, retail unit sales is what I should say. Retail unit sales has now 100% of their focus, where before they used to lose an hour here and an hour there to, oh yeah, we got to figure out what we got to do on this wholesale. Should we call Jimmy or Bobby or Freddie and see if they want to come buy some of these bikes, or maybe we'll try NPA with those three and see if that guy will take these four. And they realized that was unmanageable to scale their growth if they didn't have a process for all of their wholesale inventory that could be managed and accounted for without anybody having to lose any sleep over it. And so that was a really good thing to help them refocus all of their efforts on that retail sales part of their business, which is far more important than, what's going to happen in their wholesale when, someone like us exists to help that and take that pressure off them.
Yeah. That's great. Let's talk a little bit more about what types of buyers and or sellers are, we'll call them customers of NPA, right? It's not just dealers. It's not just dealerships, right? So what other types of businesses or types of entities do you cater to?
So on the only dealers can purchase from us, right? So if you're, only dealers can actually purchase from us. We are getting a little more into the golf cart space, which golf cart dealer is not an official term like a vehicle dealer. So that's a little interesting as we're navigating through that. But on the seller side, which I think is maybe what we're talking about there, our sellers consist of obviously power sports dealers, banks and finance companies, rental agencies. We have Polaris is a great example of a company that has a lot of spin-off things. They do some work with some entities where they, set them up with some side-by-sides and ATVs. We help with the liquidation of those. We occasionally get some, newer manufacturers that have excess product that going, hey, you know what, we got a couple hundred of this, scooter or even e-bikes. We've had some e-bikes coming through here and some other things where they'd like to try it and see, if our buyer base is a fit for some of the product they have. We try to make sure it's power sports appropriate, right? I'm not going to ever get in the truck and car auction business, and probably not in the airplane business either. Although we have had an ultralight go through one of our auctions before. That was more of like, what do we do now? Well, let's just run it and see what happens. And it sold. But if it's power sports related, if it's a bank or credit union or finance company or manufacturer entity that has something power sports related, we're pretty aware of them, and hopefully they're pretty aware of us. We've got a great team of folks that focus on that part of our business, building those relationships and trying to find out how we can, expand this marketplace for them. And I like it because I think it gives a lot of our power sport dealers more opportunity to see what else they could sell, right? We all love our Honda, Yamaha, Kawasaki, insert brand here, but with the rise in, off-road, side-by-side, e-bike, all this weird variation of electric vehicles, our space is going to change over the next 5-10 years, guaranteed. And the product mix on today's floors won't look the same 5 years from now. And so we're trying to embrace that and just kind of see what else cross paths with us.
That's great. So it's not just dealers trying to unload their problem bikes or their old age inventory. It's coming from everywhere. Repos, banks,
absolutely.
That's great. That's great.
Yeah. And the repos is a question I always get. I don't know if you have the repo question on your list there, but we should talk about it because it's a very popular question.
Yes.
So I know whoever's listening or watching us right now is going, what about the repos? Well, so here's what we can say about repos. Yes, the default rates are up. So more repossessions are out for assignment, but a lower number of them are getting collected. a lower number of them are actually getting picked up off the street, mostly because the repo network, the repossession network of people you can call to go pick up a repossessed vehicle can't keep up with the current demand. The demand for automotive and power sports is somewhere around the 2019 levels, maybe a little above. It's, let's just say it's around the 2019 levels, but the number of people that can satisfy those requests is about 50% of what it was in 2019. Half. Because how many people, how many repos there were during COVID?
Probably not very many. Yeah.
No, well, A, people paid their bills, and C, if you didn't pay your bills, you weren't allowed to have it repossessed, right? There were all kinds of laws in various states where you couldn't get your car or motorcycle or whatever repossessed because the world was ending because of COVID and everything else. So a lot of those guys had to change industries. So that repossession agent basis is slowly building back up. So we will see more repossessions. But a lot of people have speculated that there's going to be an avalanche of repossessions like there was in 2008, 9, 10. We don't see that yet. Using our best microscope, magnifying glass, telescope, we don't see that big avalanche of repossessions coming through the auction. We see it slowly growing, but not an avalanche that we saw, back there at the end of the right up to 2010.
Okay, so I want to dive into this just with a two alternative looks at this repossession question, right? So if there's an avalanche on its way or coming, or it's kind of here and we are kind of not looking at it the right way, that could be a good thing or a bad thing. And just my immediate judgment goes to, okay, it's a good thing because maybe some of these dealers can get a little bit into the repossession business. I mean, if they've sold a bike to a customer and they're no longer able to pay for it, they can try to help that customer out of it through some kind of working with the bank. They get that unit that way, maybe something like that. I've heard some things of that going on.
There are some things like that happening a little bit, but it's very spotty. I know of a gentleman in Texas who's working with some banks, specifically on marine and RV, helping people get out of upside down marine and RV product. That may evolve. It may grenade. I don't know. It's kind of a new thing. I haven't seen anything industry wide at all.
Okay. So there may be something there that isn't good, right? That could be another, place where people can pick up additional used bikes that they probably sold to that customer in the first place. Maybe that's a good thing. Maybe that's a bad thing, but my mind goes to the negative side of things. And it goes, if there's an avalanche, as you put it, of inventory coming on the repossession market, wouldn't all those bikes now drive the values down for the current bikes that are out there in retail?
It could, if the avalanche happens, which we don't think it's going to happen. But if it did happen, I mean, that's basically what happened in 2007, 8, 9, right? Values dropped like a rock across most product mix. What's interesting, and this is one of my favorite fun facts. So that's when I was first with NPA for the first couple of years, right? Started in 2007. And through 2007 through about 2012, California lost, by my rough napkin math calculation, California lost about 25 to 30% of its power sport franchise dealerships. Gone. Didn't make it from when I met them in 2007, 8, and 9. In 2012, I had at least 25% less franchise dealerships with open doors in California. Do you know how many of those customers I actually lost? Dealers that dealt with me versus that was everybody I met. And I didn't work with everybody, but the point I'm getting to is that I didn't lose a single NPA customer. I only lost the people who were not engaged in pre-owned. We only lost people that were so focused on new and weren't actively managing their new inventory or touching used and pre-owned. They didn't make it through those tougher times. Those dealerships that had some sort of pre-owned programs, they realized, hey, look, even if I'm, getting gobbled up a little bit on flooring over here, if I hustle some pre-owned bikes that I can still make 20% on, well, I can still have cash income in the dealership. So rather than race to the bottom to lower my flooring on my new product and just hope that I can save my way into success, I can actually generate revenue in the pre-owned space. I can take in those trades. I could buy those repos from the auction. Oh man, how cheap are those, XYZ brands getting, right? Whether it's, Ninja 650s or CBRs or Sportsters or whatever it happens to be. But if those prices come down, odds are you can get a better price at the auction than you can, you're still going to have plenty of margin on the street. So you can still be making your 20+% margin on your pre-owned, and that's going to offset any of your damage you might be having if new gets stagnant on you. And that's the people that made it through that hardest time period, in recent history for our industry. had some level of active pre-owned program so that it was offsetting some of the challenges that they were having on the new side of things.
That's crazy to think that dealers out there don't have some type of used vehicle, used bike program where they're actively taking them in, period. They're only focused on the new. That would just be kind of silly in my eyes. But I want to pick that a little bit more on the devaluation. If there's a flood of used bikes coming on the market for whatever reason it is, in this conversation, it's the repo term, that sudden increase in supply, that wouldn't devalue the current. I mean, those two values, they go hand in hand. I know it's retail.
Yeah, they do. Yeah, the simple supply and demand curve 100% is always going to be in effect.
Okay.
Which is why we watch it so closely, which is why we try to gauge, hey, what do we see? We're able to work with, all the finance companies, all the major finance companies in the industry, Harley Finance, Synchrony, Honda, Yamaha. We're able to get some little inkling bits of information of what they're seeing out there. And that's why I say the repossession rates are not significantly different than they were in 2019. Nothing like we saw in 2008, 9, 10, 11. So we're looking stable. And the only reason we don't have a few more repos in the auction right now is because they're more difficult to get collected right now.
Right.
So if we perfected the collection, if we perfected the ability to go scoop up all those repos, if we could help the banks do that, which we are doing to some degree, we might see another 5% inventory in my auctions, which is far from an avalanche, far from anything that would greatly upset the price, the current pricing. But we do keep an eye on that. And it can be concerning when you do see that avalanche, seeing what we saw back in, like I say, 8, 9, 10, when we've had all that inventory hit the auction.
For sure. Maybe some good opportunities out there for the dealers that are paying attention and they've got a good program revolved around it.
Opportunity exists when the market is challenging.
Mm-hmm.
That's where you can really do some good things.
I love that. Well, thanks for that. So we're kind of getting to the end here, and I always like to ask these questions towards the end, more of a looking forward statement, right? So yeah. Thank you for your time that you spent with us, Mike. Certainly a wealth of knowledge, and you've given us a history on you, on NPA, kind of what the market looks like now, post-pandemic. Inventory is becoming more of a challenge, not only to manage, but also to retail and to turn if it's something that you've been sitting on for a little while. But maybe just kind of give us in the last question here, a looking forward into, what are some predictions, some insights? What does the future look like for the motorcycle and power sports business, the market, and how can dealerships stay ahead of that curve in this increasingly dynamic industry?
There's a 2-word answer or a 3-word answer. For us, I guess I would say that the dealers that have, there's a lot of different ways to dissect this.
Give me your gut opinion here, Mike.
Yeah, going forward, agility is the key. The industry will change. If your inventory isn't current, if you are not in lockstep with your new product orders from your manufacturers, if you are not dialed in for running the dealership the way you want to run it and having the opportunities you want, you will have a challenge. The manufacturers love them, appreciate them. They fill a vital role, the most vital role in our industry. They bring in the new supply that keeps our dealerships open and our customers excited about the product. But balancing that inventory at the dealership level can be challenging, and the dealers really have to work hard at that. And that's a difficult task. The exact same thing is true on the pre-owned side. Managing the correct pre-owned inventory, managing the time turns on that, making sure that every opportunity is taken advantage of, right? We theoretically only make money on VIN numbers, right? Everything else is ancillary to the VIN numbers that go through our doors. We can only make money by touching a VIN number in the retail sales. So every VIN you don't touch is a potential dollar lost. Every one you touch is a potential dollar made. So looking at every trade-in, looking at every opportunity to move that piece of inventory, I think is huge. As a whole, I think the industry is going to continue to lean in towards the electrification in some way, shape, or form. It's early. We still have years to go. We're keeping an eye on it. It's one of the reasons we kind of are, making friends with some of the big e-bike manufacturers and touching base on some things just to kind of see how this develops. So I think, at some level that is going to have a place in our industry much more than it is today, 5 years from now, 10 years from now, who knows? So I think that's important for dealers to just be aware of what this looks like and what it could be going forward. And then, for us, I've seen a lot of buy sells happen recently, and I don't think it's a bad thing. I think it's a good thing in the fact that there are some new thoughts coming into the industry. There are some new good management practices that are coming into the industry. I say that while at the same time, love the mom and pop motorcycle store. Just in case anybody happens to be a SoCal person. So I'm the youngest of 5, and my older brothers used to dumpster dive at Don Vesco's motorcycle shop in El Cajon, California, right? El Cajon is kind of the origination of desert and speed and everything else. Well, Don Vesco, who some of you people know who is, he was the guy when it came to motorcycle speed and a lot of stuff like that. And he had that mom and pop shop. And it evolved since then into some other mom and pop shops that I used to go to when I was a kid. And I love that. So I think those are critical to our industry. And even when stores are getting bought up by groups, I love to see it when they can still maintain that feel of that small town motorcycle shop, because that's a lot of fun to go to and build those relationships with. And, this is not the automotive industry. If it tries to become the automotive industry, I don't think it'll be successful. We need that passion. We need that connection with our customers. We need that mutual form of enjoyment, whether it's on 2 wheels, 3 wheels, or 4 wheels, or whatever it is. I think that's critical to our industry. And I think we always have to keep sight of the fact that, hey, we do this because we really like the industry. If all we're trying to do is make a buck, that's okay. But there's a lot of other ways to make a buck that might even be easier, probably not as much fun. But that's the thing for me, is that if we keep our brains in it and our passion into it, I think the industry will continue to be strong.
Well said, man. Well said. I love that. And just to summarize for everybody, you got to be agile. You got to have that agility. Definitely be aware or get into the electrification that's coming down the pike. It's coming, whether you like it or not. And the buy sells, the consolidation is interesting. And it's going to be a crazy couple years watching this shift happen back towards more of a challenged retail position. And I think that you guys certainly see a lot of that on your end. You're seeing the aftermath of what this retail may or may not look like in terms of a good or bad operator at that particular dealer. So you're there as an outlet. You provide a very valuable service to these dealers, and we appreciate you coming on. So his name is Mike Murray, and we're going to go ahead and end it here. He's the VP of Sales over at National Powersports Auction. And something else that we learned today, he's also an ex-dumpster diver in the back of Ed Vasco's. So if you did not know that about him, now you know. So but we appreciate you coming on, Mike. And how can people get a hold of you? Where can they find you?
My contact information should be on National Powersport Auction's website. You guys, I'm easy to find. You can hit me up, drop me an email. mmurray, MMURRAY at npauctions.com. If you need anything, happy to take calls, questions, or if you'd like us to stop by your dealership and tell you more about any of this stuff, my territory sales managers or myself would love to come by and chat.
I love that. We'll also include all that information as well as some links in the show notes of this episode. So everybody listening at home, thank you very much. We'll see you on the next episode. Make sure to subscribe and check out the next episode when we come on. So thank you again, Mike. We'll see you later.
Thank you. Appreciate that.